Good morning, everybody. Welcome into Crunch Time here on Amateur Sports TV. Wags and Joe alongside you today. Thank you for joining us. And we've got a special guest with us today. We have Ann Rogers, the Cardinals beat writer for MLB.com, joining us today to talk a little bit about the season that was and what we can expect in the offseason. So, Ann, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's our pleasure. We're very glad that you were able to come on. First off, we want to congratulate you on the Mizzou Tigers' victory on Saturday against LSU. An exciting game, great for journalism students down there to cover as well. That must have been exciting for them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've got plenty of friends who still cover Mizzou, and it was a good game. Exciting first of all, and that's always what you want as a journalist. And then I have a few friends at LSU too, so it was kind of fun to see that banter going on Twitter and everything. But great win for the Tigers. I'm excited to see what they do next.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun year this year, no matter what. Let's start off a little bit with kind of your career. I mean, what was your experience like going to school down at Mizzou and being in that journalism program?
Yeah, it was a great experience. I went there. I grew up in Iowa and decided to go to Mizzou for journalism. So kind of like every out-of-state kid, went to Mizzou for the best journalism school in the country, and it didn't disappoint. It pushed me, it challenged me, but also I have my best friends from college, who came out of that journalism school, and I wouldn't be where I am today without it. Because I learned a lot just by doing, the Missouri Method. I covered high schools, I covered Columbia College, I covered Mizzou athletics, I covered pretty much everything I could get my hands on, and it was just such a fun experience for me to be able to, go into journalism school, learn everything that I could in class, but also apply everything that I learned outside of class, and then I was involved in a lot of different clubs. Not in the J school. So college was a great experience for me. I miss it a lot, but I think it set me up really well to come onto the Cardinals beat, and we kind of have a Mizzou pipeline over here in St. Louis. So it's been really fun, and I pretty much owe everything I have to Mizzou in my career.
Oh, that's really, really good to hear. And talk a little bit about your path to getting to where you are now. I mean, you went to the journalism school, the J school, but what was it like to go from that, and how did you get into the position that you're in now?
Yeah, so I joined my freshman year. I joined the Association for Women in Sports Media, and it's a national organization that has groups in colleges around the nation, and one of those groups is at Mizzou. So I joined that, and it's basically an association that brings women and men together to advance equality in sports journalism, whether that's in writing or TV or PR, all that. So I learned a lot from that group, and really that's how I got into baseball, because in 2018 I applied for one of their scholarships, and I received one of their scholarships to work to intern for MLB.com, and I went to Denver. I covered the Rockies as an intern in 2018, and kind of changed my whole perspective on covering baseball, and I loved it so much, and so I kind of knew that's maybe what I wanted to do. And then that was in between my junior and senior year. So as I went into my senior year, I kind of stayed in contact with all the people I met at MLB.com, and they knew how much I enjoyed covering baseball, and I think I kind of made an impression during my intern year. And so then when Jen Langosh, who had my job before me, when she decided that she was going to move to a managing role at MLB.com, she and I had known each other since really my freshman year in college. So she kind of stayed in contact with me and recommended me for the job, and kind of just went from there. So it's something that I think I was in the right place at the right time. I knew the right people, but also my hard work and work ethic and all the stuff that I learned during my intern year at MLB.com and then throughout college really helped me get into this position. And yeah, started about 3 weeks after I graduated college in May 2019, and moved to St. Louis and started this job, and it's been full go ever since. This year has been certainly different, but I've still, basically every day I learn something new, and I've really enjoyed it. It's something different that I never thought I'd be doing, but definitely grateful to be here.
Well, and you talk about this season being incredibly odd. What are your kind of takeaways from this season, especially from the Cardinals' point of view? I mean, they went through something that only one other team really went through in Miami. What are your takeaways from this season?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, it's to evaluate this season because they played 53 games in 44 days, and that does take its toll. But at the end of the day, it is about wins and losses, and it is about where they finished. And they're certainly not satisfied finishing, in the wild card series. So I think, there's definitely things that they can build on. There's definitely things that they can fix. But it's interesting to kind of look and how do you evaluate this shortened season and this just such a difficult and odd season around baseball, but also from the Cardinals' perspective. So I think, they have ways to do that, and they will. They're going to be, as Mike Schultz said, at the end of the season, they're going to be fair, but they're not going to alibi anything. And I think that's true. They have to take a hard look at what they saw, because there was a lot of games that you could see kind of what this team is, what their identity is, and kind of go from there. So I think it's going to be an interesting off season because of what happened this season. But as always, they're not satisfied with losing in the first round of the playoffs. They're happy they made it. They're glad they made it. They deserve to make it. But at the end of the day, they're out to win a championship, and that's not what they did in 2020.
Yeah, and we saw, I think 13 Major League Baseball debuts for the Cardinals this year because of the amount of games that they played in such a short amount of time. And one of those was the eagerly anticipated debut of Dylan Carlson. He had the struggles in his first stint up here, went back down to the travel squad, and then came back up and played pretty well after that. You look at the outfield for next season. Is he an everyday outfielder at this point after what we saw? And B, is there a spot that he's going to occupy next year? I mean, obviously Harrison Bader's probably going to be your center fielder. If he's an everyday player, is he right or left field?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think before going into what he'll be next year, I think that's one of the things the Cardinals learned this season is, how much depth that they have from all those rookies that they debuted this year. You can talk about the offense, you can talk about the outfield or whatever, but they learned what they have in their farm system this year, and that's going to be key for their plans moving forward. So yeah, Dylan Carlson, he was always expected to debut this season, but he kind of lived up to his expectations in that second stint, as you said, and he showed really what he can do. I do think he can be a starting outfielder next season. I mean, he's certainly going to be in the position to win that spot. He was in that position last year. But I think he's going to, I would put him in center field every day, but I think you can also put him in left field too, and have Dexter Fowler in right field. And they might also just have him move around like he did this year. But I do think that you're going to see him in the lineup in top of the order, middle of the order kind of guy every day or close to every day next year.
All right, you said you could see him as the starting center fielder. Does that mean we may have to be worried about Harrison Bader not being a part of this team next year?
I think you have to take a good hard look at what the outfielders did this year, and the Cardinals will do that. They need offense from the outfield. There's no question about that. They know that. Every outfielder knows that. All the fans know that. They need offense, and Harrison Bader flashed what he can do at the plate, but he needs to be more consistent. He needs to bring his strikeout rate down. He needs to make more contact with the ball, and he showed he can do that. He just needs to show a little bit more consistency. And so I think, if the Cardinals move forward and with Harrison Bader in center field, that's great. He's just going to have to show a little bit more consistency, and then you have Dylan Carlson in left field. But I do think that they're gonna seek offense from the outfield this off season, and where that takes them, there's a lot of different ways that they could do that, through free agency, through trade, through just rearranging their outfielders. But we'll kind of see how that works. But I do think that they're gonna have to look really hard at what their outfielders can bring.
Yeah, and you talked about that offensive struggles that they had this year. They're going to have to go out and look for upgrades. And the big question is where are they going to look for those upgrades? Are they going to look at that third base DH position? Are they going to look at the outfield position? We're big Nolan Arenado fans here on the show, and so we're pining for him. But what is the actual outlook for what this team is probably going to be looking at?
I think it's interesting. It's gonna, and then maybe what we've seen, just because of the financial situation of the off season, from everything else that they have to look at. I mean, keep in mind, they want to be able to bring Adam Wainwright and Yadier Molina back. They also have a young core of arbitration eligible players for the first year, including Jack Flaherty. So they're going to have to kind of look at, what financially they can do. And I think their biggest asset is they have the depth to be able to trade. So they're going to be in the trade market, and they're going to explore the free agency market for outfielder or maybe third base. I'm not sure really on how they view, where Tommy Edman fits, where Matt Carpenter fits, but I do think that, they'll be in the markets. They have to add a hitter. I mean, they know that, and they'll look to do that. But where that hitter comes from, what that hitter plays, we'll kind of see as the offseason unfolds, and after the World Series, what they kind of do with their roster and how all that fits, because they're going to have to, there's a lot of roster maneuvering that's going to have to take place shortly after the World Series ends. And
it's not just the offense that we're a little bit concerned with. Dakota Hudson had Tommy John surgery, leaves an open spot in the starting rotation. Who are the guys that you think will be competing for that fifth spot? Obviously, you think Adam Wainwright's probably coming back, but locked into one of the top four. But who in your mind is probably the guys that are going to be fighting for that spot?
Yeah, I think you've got Austin Gomber and Daniel Ponce de Leon as two of the top contenders. They showed what they can do in spot starts, and so and Austin Gomber really impressed down the stretch. So we'll kind of see how they do competing for that spot in spring. But I think those are two guys that you really look at as kind of taking over one of those spots. So really you have Jack Flaherty, you have Gung Hun Kim, who'll be in a second year. I'm assuming that he'll be back in the rotation because of what he did this year. He really impressed as a starter. And then you have Austin Gomber or Daniel Ponce de Leon, or maybe both. Hopefully they can bring back Adam Wainwright because of what he has done on the field and off the field. Obviously, we know what impact he brings. But yeah, and then I think you saw what maybe Johan Oviedo can do. You saw kind of a lot of different guys stepped up, but I do think that Austin Gomber and Daniel Ponce de Leon are going to be two of those frontline contenders there for a rotation spot, take over Hudson's spot.
So does that mean that Alex Reyes is probably destined for the bullpen, or is he another guy that could really put?
Absolutely, you've got Alex Reyes there. He showed. I mean, his biggest impact this year obviously was in the bullpen, but he showed he can stay healthy, and that is, that's not an easy. That was not an easy thing for him. After 3 injury-prone years, so he showed he can be healthy. He's always wanted to be a starter. I think they'll kind of see how this rotation shakes out, but he will absolutely enter spring as a rotation contender, and obviously if he doesn't win one of those spots, he'll go to the bullpen, and you saw what kind of impact he had there. But yeah, Alex Reyes, absolutely, that's a good one, and I don't have my notes in front of me, so great catch there.
Well, the thing with the Cardinals, like you said, is they have so much depth, because we haven't even talked about Matthew Libator, Zach Thompson, guys like that. So they have a bunch of options going into spring training, and then they also have Nolan Gorman down there as well. Kind of jumping back to the offense, do you see any of those three guys either starting the year with the team or making an impact later on in the season?
I do see those two pitchers, Matthew Libator and Zach Thompson, being able to make an impact in 2021. I don't see. I honestly, I can't give a fair assessment of where they'll be at the start of the season, but I do foresee them maybe helping out down the stretch, either in the bullpen or maybe even as a starter. I mean, we kind of talked about early in the year Zach Thompson being able to help in this year in 2020. Obviously, that didn't pan out the way that it did. I think they're probably a little bit happy about that. They didn't have to use him this year in this season, but I think he'll definitely be on their radar, whether it's in the bullpen or even in the rotation if he impresses in spring. I think that they're excited to have him on the horizon, and also Liberatore, I think, can help in the bullpen down the stretch in 2021. And Nolan Gorman, I don't have an honest assessment of him either right now. We didn't get much intel from the satellite camp or the alternate training site camp. But I think, over the offseason we'll kind of hear more about how he did. And he's the kind of guy who really just needs more reps and more game action. And I think, we'll see that obviously in spring training and beyond for next year. Hopefully there's some more game action for minor leaguers next year.
Yeah, and speaking of the minor leaguers, I mean, is there any indication of how that may work next year? I mean, spring training's still a little ways off, but it's getting closer than we think. But what does that look like? And then what does the minor league structure look like? We've lost teams. There's the independent league things that are kind of being joined together with Major League Baseball. Is there any indication of how that's going to work?
There's not yet. I mean, not publicly anyway. It's going to be different for sure. The Cardinals have already lost their rookie level of Johnson City in the Appalachian League. They lost that while they were in the Wild Card Series. My sense of time is all messed up, so I'm not sure how long ago that was. But so they've already lost that one, and they're foreseeing losing another affiliate. So we'll kind of see how it all shakes out. I imagine there will be more clarity on that after the World Series ends and as the baseball world kind of shifts into the off season for every team. So it's going to look different. I'm not sure I'm honestly not sure what it's going to look like. If there's going to be games, if there's going to be leagues like we've seen before, but it's not going to be what we have seen in minor league world. It's not going to be normal at all. And it's a shame, but I think they're going to do their best to make sure that these players get the playing time and get the development that they deserve.
Yeah, and we saw that. I mean, this was all coming before COVID hit anyway, but now we're seeing how drastic it is in that case. And then speaking of money, then you've got a guy like Colton Wong that's going to have a $12.5 million option that the Cardinals are looking at picking up. Is this something where they just flat out pick it up and say you're back, or are we looking at a potential buyout and renegotiation?
I think, they haven't given any indication of either way, but I do think that they're going to look at all the options. They have, I think, 5 days after the World Series ends before they either pick up the option or decline the option. So there's still a bit of time for them to approach Colton and his representation and kind of see where they're at. I could honestly see either way. And they're definitely going to approach the situation and see what Colton thinks and what the maybe they're looking at a new contract. Maybe they're looking at just picking up the option. They could also be looking at the buyout. So I think this week is kind of when they'll dive into that and what both sides foresee happening and all that. But it would be a shame if they didn't approach Wong and kind of see what he's thinking, because he does have a lot of value defensively, and we saw what he could do offensively last year. And so I think there's a spot for him on this team. It's just a matter of how it kind of shakes out over the next few weeks here. Yeah,
and would be great if you had a Gold Glove first baseman, Gold Glove second baseman, a potential Gold Glove shortstop, and bring in Arenado, and you got a Gold Glove third baseman with a Gold Glove catcher. I mean, that's a pretty good offense or defense.
I'm really looking forward to all of their Arenado questions this offseason. I had a nice break from them during the season, but I'm pretty sure about a few hours after the season ends, people are already starting to fill my mentions up with Arenado talk. So I appreciate that.
It's going to be a long off season. We'll put it that way. Did you get a chance to catch Adam Wainwright in the booth for the Marlins Braves series at all?
I did. Yeah, I was actually helping out with Marlins coverage for MLB.com. So I was locked in on the games and hearing Adam Wainwright, and that was really cool. I think he really enjoyed that, and he's great. I mean, he's great with the media. He's great with Fox Sports Midwest whenever he goes on their broadcast. So I think he definitely has a career in broadcasting after, if he'd like, whether that's next year or year after or 5 years down the road. I'm not sure what that looks like, but I'm pretty sure every network would love to have him in the booth, because he's just insightful. He's a great talker. He he knows so much about the game, and he's just a really fun guy to listen to.
Yeah, he was a blast to listen to. The last thing we'll talk about is kind of not a downer, but we have lost a lot of Hall of Famers here as of late. Lou Brock, Bob Gibson with the Cardinals. We just lost Whitey Ford last week, and just last night we lost Joe Morgan. Just kind of give us your thoughts on the passings of these gentlemen, because I'm sure you got a chance to, at the very least, spend a little time with Lou and Bob in your career.
Yeah, it's just crushing. It's hard because these guys they're legends. I mean, there's no other way to put it. They're absolute legends both on and off the field, and I know how much Bob Gibson and Lou Brock mean to Cardinal Nation. I mean, I grew up in Iowa, and my grandpa was a diehard Cardinals fan, and Lou Brock was the first Cardinals player I ever heard about, because my grandpa just loved his speed and loved what he did on the bases, and just was he idolized Lou Brock, and so it's hard to hear about this. It's nice that there's some solace in knowing that they're free of pain now, and we get the chance to kind of remember these greats, what they did, and how they left a lasting legacy on the team. It's crushing to kind of hear about so many of these Hall of Famers are passing away this year. And I mean, like you mentioned with Brock and Gibson and Whitey Ford and Joe Morgan, I mean, it's every day it's like, oh no, what's going to happen now? 2020 can kind of get over with right now, please. But yeah, it's for me, it's really kind of cool to hear all the stories that come out of Lou Brock and Bob Gibson's passing. I mean, obviously it's super sad, and you don't want to hear about it, but the stories that fans tell, the stories that sports writers and players and all the people that are associated with the Cardinals, the stories that they can tell about Gibson and Brock, it's just so cool to hear those, and how they left their impact on this, on St. Louis.
Yeah, and we're going to have one hell of a celebration the next time we're at Busch Stadium with fans in attendance. It's going to be one wild party.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to that.
Well, Ann, let us know where we can find you, so that our listeners can read your stuff, hear your thoughts. Where can we find you?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Ann_Rogers. And then all my stuff is on Cardinals.com and MLB.com. You can read it there. So, yeah, thanks for having me on. Thanks for reading. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Thank you for joining us, and have a great rest of your Monday as well as we can.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully no bad news comes along this week.
Agreed. Well, Ann, once again, thank you for joining us, and have a great day.
Okay, thank you. Have a good one.
Well, that was Ann Rogers from MLB.com. A lot of great insight into not only the season that was, but also what the Cardinals are possibly doing in the offseason. And, we had some technical difficulties trying to figure out how to make all this work, but I definitely want to bring Joe in and get his thoughts on what he heard and what he thought about Ann's answers.
I mean, they were really informative. They were really something that, I thought we'd get out of her anyway when it comes to, how the season went. I was on record in saying the Cardinals didn't deserve to make the playoffs, and I was totally wrong on that, because here's the thing. What they went through this year, not many teams can go through that and playing that many games in that amount of time, and it would have been just easy for them to throw in the towel, and they didn't. So I liked Ann's answer there. It's going to be interesting. She said that possibly you could see a Dylan Carlson in center field. But what do you do from a Harrison Bader point of view? Harrison Bader, while, yes, we talk about his offense all the time not being there, he still is a plus defender. So it's going to be interesting to see where the Cardinals go. Now, what I do wanted to ask her, other than what you did, was knowing the economics of the game right now and knowing the uncertainty of what's going to happen next year, fans or no fans, how many moves can the Cardinals conceivably make? I mean, we don't really have a figure of how much they lost, but we know they lost a pretty big amount of money. So, that would have been an interesting question
as you get closer to the offseason actually beginning, with after the World Series, you'll be able to understand a little bit more about what their options are, because as she said, the Colton Wong situation, you've got a multitude of options there. The $12.5 million option, you could renegotiate his contract, you could buy him out and then renegotiate as well. So there's a lot of interesting factors there. And jumping back to the Harrison Bader thing, she did say that the Cardinals were evaluating what they saw in Harrison Bader this year. And it may come to the point where they go, look, his defense can't save his lack of offense. And if someone were to come down the pipe and let's say you could throw him into a trade for an Arenado or a Lindor or something of that nature, at least you have a guy in Carlson that you see fitting into center field every single day. So the good thing about what Carlson was able to do in his second stint was show the Cardinals that they have the ability to free up some space by moving guys that at the time they thought were immovable as far as they didn't have a replacement. So it's kind of refreshing to hear that the mindset is there, that they're looking at everything. They feel like they had enough time to see what they had, and that essentially all options are on the table.
It's funny. I didn't hear any mention of Tyler O'Neill. That's another question you need to ask yourself, because
I don't think he'll be back.
He wasn't good this year either. I mean, do you think they just release him outright, or do you think he's part of a trade? I don't think he has any value. That's why I don't think he's a part of a trade, man.
When the Cardinals traded for Jed Jerko, he was a guy that struck out a lot, but had the potential to hit 25 to 30 home runs. Okay, that's the same thing with Tyler O'Neill, and he's a plus defender too. That's the other thing. There's his value right there. He's a plus defender, and he has the ability to get you 25 to 30 home runs in a season. That is some value right there. That's the same thing that Jed Jerko brought when the Cardinals traded for him those years ago. So, obviously different positions, and I think Tyler O'Neill's a little bit more prone to striking out than Jed Jerko was, although Jerko struck out a lot. He does have value to somebody that's looking for, one of those corner outfielders that they can, bring off the bench and has the pop. So, he does have some value when it comes to the trade market.
The thing is, we talk about Harrison Bader and Tyler O'Neill. That leaves if Carlson is your center fielder, that leaves one spot open. We talk about maybe upgrading the infield. You kind of need to upgrade the outfield too. We talk about having so many outfielders. We saw all of them this year for a period of time, even though it was a 60-game season. And really, your best outfielder was Dexter Fowler. That should say something right there. It's alarming.
I'd argue that Dylan Carlson eventually became the best.
Yeah, but I'm talking the entire season.
Well, Dexter Fowler didn't play the entire season though.
Well,
he didn't look all that great after he came back either. Granted, he didn't have a whole lot of time to get back into form, but
right.
I would argue that Dylan Carlson was probably ended up being the best outfielder on the Cardinals. And, honestly, I think if Harrison Bader's not with this team next year, Dylan Carlson's your center fielder. Dexter Fowler's out there in the outfield as well. And I don't think they go about finding an outfielder, but they might. You never know. But, Tommy Edman is a guy that they got to find out what they're going to do with him. And it really all hinges on, what they feel that they've got with him, what they feel like they've got with Matt Carpenter, and if they decide to go out and pursue a guy like Arenado or Lindor. And if that's the case, then one of those two guys comes in, your infield is set, which means Tommy Edman and Matt Carpenter, you have to figure out what you're doing there. Does Matt Carpenter move to the DH spot? Can you handle Matt Carpenter in the DH spot? Does Tommy Edman go to the outfield? Because he did play some of the outfield at the end of the season last year. So, at this point, you can't really say what you're looking for until you make that first move, in a sense, because I think they're gonna scour the options. They're gonna look at the outfielders, they're gonna look at the infielders, and then they're gonna look at what's the realistic opportunities that they have. And if they go out and they, people can continue to bring up George Springer's name. Well, if they go out and sign George Springer, which I'm not on board with that decision if that's the case, then it almost shuts the door on them going out and getting an infielder, because now your outfield is set to an extent, and you've got Tommy Edman that will go over to third base. So I think they have to really look long and hard at what they really want to go about doing first in the offseason, and that's what they have to look at.
It's funny. I don't know if you saw all of the Warman interview, but we talked about that in length. We talked about having one more year for Matt Carpenter to prove himself. But at the same time, I was thinking to myself after that interview was over, don't you think there's been enough time already he's had 2 bad seasons already, that you can evaluate him and what he's going to do for the rest of his career? I mean, I even asked him flat out, Wags, I go, is he done? I mean, at this point, that's the question you have to ask.
Yeah, the problem with that is it seems like the Cardinals are owing Matt Carpenter loyalty, and I think Matt Carpenter is owing loyalty to the Cardinals as well, not demanding a trade or anything of that nature. I think the Cardinals are going to stay loyal to Matt Carpenter and stick with him through the rest of the contract, mainly because he was a good piece of that team, in the late 2010s and mid 2010s, and yes, he's fallen off completely over the last couple of years, although there were some signs of a rebound this year. There were a couple times during the year where you're like, oh, he looks like he's getting it and he might be turning a corner, and then he doesn't. So he's very possible that he could be a bench player and use him for his veteran leadership and things like that. But the same thing that goes for Tommy Edman, that goes for Matt Carpenter. He's not an everyday player. These guys are guys that when they have been put into the lineup frequently and repetitively, their weaknesses have been shown. Matt Carpenter was successful when he was that guy that was a spot starter that moved around the infield, didn't necessarily play every day. Same thing with Tommy Edman. Last year he was a spot starter. He came in, he pinch hit, and he had a phenomenal half a season. Well, this year he did not have as good a season as you would expected him to have, because he was playing every day. He was getting exposed a little bit. And that's the same thing with Matt Carpenter. But I think that the Cardinals will be loyal to him, and he'll end up sticking through here through the remainder of his contract.
Which, I mean, I totally get it, because you're paying him. You might as well hang on to him and see what he can do. And, it's sad.
Yeah, but it shouldn't be to the detriment of the team, though. That's the piece of it, though. I mean, I understand, yes, paying the guy his money, but if you're not at least exploring options of, maybe getting him to a spot where another team pays his money and the team is better off with him not being here, you need to make sure you're exploring those options.
You really do. But for some reason, I don't see John Mozeliak, Bill DeWitt. I don't see those guys even exploring those options. I just don't, because of the aforementioned loyalty that they have. So I don't know, but my question to you is, Wags, there was one thing that, how many guys do you think are going to be,
I'd like to Martin, please let us know why you believe that Carpenter's not done, that Tommy is an everyday player, because it is an argument that's being had on both sides. And, we have our opinions, but we need to see what the other side is, because somebody could make a really strong argument and show us some numbers or something that makes you go, okay, I understand. That makes a lot of sense. So yeah, I mean, Martin, if you've got something and you see something, let us know, because we're open to all arguments, because you're not going to shut the door on somebody just because maybe you don't like him or you don't like his style of play. So I'm all open to it.
Well, yeah, I am too. My question was, do you think how many people do you think the Cardinals will try out for that 5th spot, knowing that you're going to miss Dakota Hudson? You don't know what you're going to get from a guy in Miles Michaelis. How many of those guys do you see battling it out for that 5th spot? I feel like it's going to be 10 or more. I mean, it
very well could be. It very well could be. But once again, it comes down to, Jack Flaherty is in the rotation. And that's it. That's the only guy that you can sit there and say, we know is going to be in the Cardinals rotation next year. KK is likely to be in there. We'll see. You've got to re-sign Adam Wainwright if that's the case, and that gives you 3. You really don't know what you're getting out of Miles Michaelis. I mean, who knows if he's even going to start the season with the Cardinals? He may still be recovering. So that's another question mark. Then you've got, like you said, Gomber, Ponce de Leon are guys in there. You've got an Alex Reyes who could try out for it. You've got a Zach Thompson who might have really been in this rotation this year if it was a full season. You got Matthew Liberatore down there. You've got a lot of options. I mean, Ryan Helsley's another guy that is somebody that they look at as potentially being a guy that could start as well. So you might be right. This might be a 10-man tryout when spring training rolls around. And honestly, I'm okay with that, because the more guys you have in open competition, the more they're going to push each other to be the best. And you might end up coming out with a bunch of guys that you can either use in your rotation or maybe use as trade bait to bring in a guy that you need for the offense.
Hopefully we get Ann on again, because that's something I want to ask. And also I want to ask her why or where she sees Alex Reyes profiling. Is it as a starter or is it as a reliever, because the Cardinals have so much depth?
I mean, I think she kind of answered that a little bit in a sense that she believes that Reyes does have a chance and an opportunity to pitch in the rotation. But I think he's one of those guys that you can kind of put him out there at any point and be okay, because he showed that this year. And Martin chimed in. Here's his response. Tommy can play in whatever position you put him in, and he is clutch. I'm from Fort Worth, and Carp is my wife's favorite player. Ooh, he frustrates me, but when you need somebody to get on base and you need somebody to have a chance to drive in a bunch of runs, especially with bases loaded, Matt is the best at that. And he has shown that in the past, and I don't have the numbers in front of me because I didn't expect us to go down that route of conversation. So I would be interested to see if that's the case over the last couple of years. Is he still that guy that's clutch, that can still drive in runners when need be? And he was a little bit better in the postseason against the Padres. I'll give him that 100%. I wasn't as nervous when he came up to bat, because he had shown over the last couple of weeks that he was kind of turning a corner a little bit, not to where we were used to, not that MVP second half a few years ago. But yeah, that's going to be interesting. We're going to have to dive a little bit deeper into those statistics and see if that's still the case, not just for Carpenter, but also for Tommy Edman as well. What is the clutch statistic for them? Are they guys that when they come up in those situations are legitimately clutch? So that'll be interesting for us to dive deep in. And we'll try to have an answer for you on our nightly show tonight at 9:00, and we'll see if that's the case.
Yeah, I just can't wait to see what the Cardinals actually do. When does free agency actually begin in Major League Baseball? Because I know it's different than any other year. So what is it?
I think it's 5 days after the World Series ends, because that was what Ann was talking about with the Colton Wong situation, is they basically right after the World Series. So I'm thinking it's probably somewhere in that time frame right there. So yeah, it's going to be a real interesting off season. Martin, I'm pretty sure he's still at 500 with bases loaded. He very well could be. Now, it'd be interesting to see where he started at and where the last couple of years have put him. But once again, if you can get the statistics and you can see trends, that's going to help in anybody's argument. So like I said, I'm totally open to having those conversations, to those arguments about why somebody should still be in the lineup. So we'll definitely dig into that a little bit. Let's talk a little bit before we wrap up here about the passings of the legends that have happened here in the last couple of months. Like we said, Lou Brock and Bob Gibson have passed away for the Cardinals, Whitey Ford for the Yankees last week, and then just last night, Reds Hall of Famer Joe Morgan passed away. We didn't get a chance to see these guys at opening day for the Cardinals or throughout the season like we do for some of these guys. Is that the hard, outside of losing them, obviously, is that the part that hurts the most about this year, is not having to have been able to celebrate these guys once more like we've done in the past?
Yeah, and I like a lot of people in St. Louis had tickets to opening day, and knowing when that was canceled per se, it was like, oh no. I mean, these guys are getting older. I mean, me and family talk all the time. It's like we're losing the old guard. I mean, the oldest member you have now is Cardinal Hall of Famer wise, Bruce Sutter, Ozzie Smith. I mean, all of these guys from the 60s are kind of passing away. It's just sad, man, because you want to honor these guys. But you know what? And the same point, when we do get fans back in the stands again, hopefully it's next year, which I think it will be, there is going to be one hell of a celebration on opening day. And I don't think it's just going to be for the Cardinal Hall of Famers, to be honest with you. I think it's going to be for the people that we've lost in general. We've lost some big-time baseball players. When you talk about Whitey Ford, you talk about Joe Morgan. Joe Morgan, integral part of those Big Red Machine teams. I mean, all the time when I think of Joe Morgan, I think of this. The way you don't see that nowadays. I feel like you tear an elbow doing that now, but no, these guys were so integral to baseball history, and I feel like all of them need to be equally, celebrated. And I don't care where opening day is. These guys should be like a Jackie Robinson in a sense where they need to be celebrated everywhere.
Oh yeah, and I think they will. I can't remember if they've released. The 2021 regular season schedule has come out, and I think there'll be some sort of celebration, at least a little bit for Ford and Morgan. But for the Cardinals, they're opening the season in Cincinnati. So that there's going to be a celebration there in Cincinnati for that, and the Cardinals will definitely take part of that. And when they eventually open at home against the Brewers on the 8th of April, there'll definitely be obviously the opening day festivities and that as well. And I would expect them, when the Reds visit, to have some sort of tribute in the middle of April as well. The one thing that is going to suck a little bit is the fact that, you're not going to be able to play the Yankees this year and kind of help them celebrate the life of Whitey Ford. But I think you're right. I think at some point they will honor all the guys that were lost this year, because it is a very, very heavy Hall of Fame loss this year. And just so you know, Whitey Herzog's still around. He's 88 years old, so he is the oldest Cardinal Hall of Famer that's still around. So Whitey's still with us.
Yeah. So, and again, he's not really doing well in a sense. So it's 2020 just needs to end now. I mean, like Ann said, 2020 just can go bye-bye, please, because the people that it's taken from us is awful.
Well, you do know that 2020 is the year that we have that extra month, right? Every century in the 20s, because of the way that the sun rotates around the earth, or the earth rotates around the sun and all that stuff, that every 20th year of a century, there's an extra month added on to the year. So it just sucks that what we're going through is going to have to last an extra month.
Yeah, it's awful, but it is what it is, and hopefully we can get out of it.
Dude, come on, really? You believe that?
Yeah. No, well, what?
You believed it.
Yeah, I did, because you know what? 2020's made me believe some things that I thought I'd never believe. Okay, do you get my point though?
When have you ever heard about an extra month in a year, though?
I know, dude. I'm just talking about doom and gloom, and these guys, it just got me all doom and gloom. So it's like, which makes sense. Come on, Wags. But I don't know if we have time for this, Wags, but I did get another quote about the passing of Eddie Van Halen. Is there any way I can read that real quick before we?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, because this was a powerful quote. Jimmy Griffin, if you guys don't know who he is a guitarist for a ton of tribute bands here in town, and he is so good. If you haven't seen him play, you need to, once everything does calm down, because wow, this guy is unbelievable. Edward Van Halen is what happens when joy, fearlessness, heart, technology, and diligence all become one. It's a rare thing. It's a rare and elusive combination that we are only shown in small amounts. It gives the rest of us something to obtain. It burns and shines at a rate the rest of us can only marvel from a distance and dream that we could be that special.
Yeah, that just goes to show you what one man has meant to so many people. We've had a ton of tributes pouring in for Eddie Van Halen, and they're going to keep pouring in because of what he has done for music as a whole. And Martin, thanks for jumping on the joke there, Martin. It's called Extra Timber. So make sure you guys send Joe your extra timber gifts this year. He'll be expecting them on September 1st.
That will be funny. I can't wait to receive those. I feel like I deserve a couple of those right now.
Yeah. They're not going to be presents. I'll put it that way. Oh, man. Well, once again, we want to thank Ann Rogers from MLB.com for joining us. He's the Cardinals beat writer there. Just a great conversation about the way the season went and the offseason that we can kind of expect for the St. Louis Cardinals this year. Make sure to join us again tonight at 9 o'clock as we have our nightly show where we'll discuss everything going on in the world of sports, including our reactions to the NBA Finals, Monday Night Football, the COVID situation that's continuing to go on in the NFL. And we'll also talk a little bit about the AL and NLCSs as well, because those are now underway. The Rays are up 1-0 in their series, and then the Dodgers and the Braves get underway tonight as well. That's going to be a fun series. So make sure you come back tonight around 9 o'clock and join us for Crunch Time Nightly. For Joe, for Scott, who was unable to be with us today, I am Wags. Until later tonight, have a great rest of your Monday.